so much more healing is possible. And our society and our culture and our medical system does not believe that. But when you understand that the body wants to heal itself, number one. Number two, the body doesn't have any kind of sickness or disease for no reason. There's always a reason why. And the cool thing is, if you fix that reason, then the body heals itself.
Guys, welcome back to the Faith, Fitness, and Chronic Illness podcast. My name's Andrea. Today I have Dr. Joel with me, but before I dive into that, I just want to let you guys know I'm accepting new patients. You can click the link below in the description and schedule a free discovery call to make sure that we would be a good fit so we can work one-on-one. I specialize in chronic illness like mold and Lyme, but I'd be more than happy to help you with anything under the sun, even weight loss or just learning how to eat. But let's get back to Dr. Joel. He is a physician, a chiropractic physician in Dallas, Texas, and he utilizes functional medicine and systems healthcare to get to the bottom of any and all chronic and complex health issues. He went to school with a desire to help any person that came into his practice to be able to heal, no matter how chronic, how complex, or how impossible the condition is. By God's grace and kindness, Dr. Joel's been able to successfully help patients from 9 days old to 90 years old with things that most doctors say are impossible to fix, like completely reversing autoimmune conditions, fully detoxing from mold, or healing things like IBS, all in the matter of a couple months. So Dr. Joel is amazing. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. Please remember that it is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please speak with a physician if you want to implement anything that is mentioned in this podcast. Please make sure to reach out to either of us too. I'll have Dr. Joel's information down below, and you can either shoot one of us a private message and maybe get on our schedule so we can help you. Other than that, enjoy the podcast. Hey guys, welcome back to the Faith, Fitness, and Chronic Illness podcast. I'm your host, Andrea, and I have Dr. Joel Miller with me today. Thank you so much for joining.
I'm excited to be here. I think we'll get into some good stuff today.
Yeah, so I met Dr. Joel through a mutual friend at church, and we seem to really we see eye to eye on a lot of things with healthcare and healing and wellness, and we both believe that the body is ultimately able to heal itself. And so with that being said, I want to get to know you a little bit more and what you specifically do first, and then we'll kind of jump into root cause healing and stuff. So what's your practice name? What are you doing? Who are you?
Yeah, sounds good. So I grew up in Virginia. I grew up in a homeschooled family, played tons of sports, grew up in a Christian household. And so above all things, my walk with the Lord is by far the most important. And it's actually through that lens from a fairly early age that I saw that the body actually wants to heal itself, because God's design is that. And I would see so many other people that view the body differently. They view the body as if it was a robot or a machine. And in order to fix an issue, they essentially believe that the body was broken and that we need to manipulate it with drugs and chemicals, or we need to cut something out. And so kind of had that perspective going through life and just that understanding. And so went to chiropractic school. I had the goal essentially of learning how to work with the muscles and tissues so I could work with athletes, but then also learn about nutrition, because I know nutrition was helpful with every single case that there is. And the ultimate goal was to be able to, through the 3.5 years of school, to be able to learn everything I needed to, technique-wise, knowledge-wise, all these things, to be able to help every single patient that comes in my practice, whether it was an autoimmune condition they were told they couldn't reverse, whether it was chronic migraines that nobody could figure out, whether it was the C word, all these different things. So by the grace of God, I can say that even upon graduation, that I had been equipped with all of those things. And then from here, I'm just continuing to learn more and gain more experience and all that good stuff. So started my first practice in Kansas. I was there for a number of reasons, personal reasons mainly. That practice was doing great, was there for about a year, and different things changing in my personal life. Moved down here to Dallas. And so I'm in the Dallas, Texas area here, specifically in Flower Mound. And it's a little suburb of Dallas. And the practice here is called Freedom Health and Wellness. The name has a lot of meaning behind it. Essentially, there's a desire for people to be set free from health issues and pains and all these ailments in our earthly, physical, temporary bodies, but also freedom from anything, spiritually, any spiritual bondage and things like that, because as I know you talk about quite a bit, and as do I, the true freedom is only found in and through Jesus, and so we can get into that more. But so that's freedom, health, and wellness. And so what it looks like now, again, by the grace of God, is I'll see. Um, Usually 5 or 6 patients a day, depending on appointments and things. But usually the appointments are a little bit longer, an hour to 2 hours, things like that. I'll see kids. The youngest I've seen is a 6-day old. And then the oldest I've seen is 90 some, maybe 92 or something like that. But most of the people are between 20 and 50, and they have issues ranging from your common gut issues and hormone issues, and they want a holistic approach, to people that have been to like literally 7 or 8 doctors and nobody has really been able to help them. They've tried the medical route, they've tried the holistic route, and people really haven't gotten to the bottom of things. So that leads us to today. And really, I think, I'm sure we'll get into some good stuff here, but the one thing that's really blown my mind, I think that the Lord has kind of shown me over these 3 years. I've only been practicing for 3 years, but he's done so much in and through me in that time. And I think the thing that he's shown me the most is that so much more healing is possible. In our society and our culture and our medical system does not believe that. But when you understand that the body wants to heal itself, number one. Number two, the body doesn't have any kind of sickness or disease for no reason. There's always a reason why. And the cool thing is, if you fix that reason, then the body heals itself. And it's the coolest thing. And so no matter how hopeless somebody is, or no matter how chronic someone's condition has been, I've had tons of those people. I've been in that situation in my own health. And when it seems like, man, this thing is not getting better, you get to the bottom of things, you address it correctly, and the body will heal itself. And so it's been a really, really cool thing. So that's my quick story there. I'm sure we'll get into different parts, but
Yeah, so
yeah.
you said that you have experienced something yourself with your health. Do you want to dive into that a little bit and share
Yeah,
more?
yeah. So I think a lot of it started, probably the majority of it started, I actually went into chiropractic school with eczema. I didn't really know much about it. I didn't really do a lot of research, but I'd asked a couple different chiropractors in my hometown in Virginia what I could do for it. And I had some eczema on my hands, on my eyelid, on my face a little bit. And some chiropractors said, get more omega-3s, which is not a bad idea, but it's like, that's probably like 3% of the issue, from what I found. And then there's actually a student who just graduated from medical school at our church. And I said, hey, what do you know about like eczema, and what can I do to help with that? And I figured he's just fresh out of school, so he, probably is very knowledgeable and all these different things. And he said, yeah, I think you can get a lotion for that. And I thought, what is this guy talking about? Lotion my butt? That's not going to help my body heal itself. And so I didn't say that to him, but those are the things that go on in my head. But anyways, through my going through chiropractic school, got connected with a few people, and they're like, hey, have you ever been tested for parasites? And so they did some muscle testing for parasites. Took a couple herbs for it. Basically, I had like a gluten sensitivity, so I avoided that for a bit. And then basically over the period of 2, 3, 4 months, my eczema totally went away. And so there's that issue. And then the first practice I had in Kansas, the building was full of mold. And so this goes back to where, yeah, we have similar stories in that.
Yeah,
So the
okay.
building was full of mold, and I didn't really know about mold, and I didn't even figure out my health was getting wrecked because of mold for probably like 7 or 8 months. Like it took that long for me to figure it out. But what I realized was, by the end of every day in that office, I was exhausted. I would go home, I would sleep about 8 to 10 hours, and I felt like I slept 30 minutes. And then eventually, when I would go into the office, within about 5, 10 minutes, my nose would start running. Actually, it was probably sooner than that, probably within 1 minute. My nose would start running. And then within about 10 minutes, I'd get super bloated and basically have irritable bowels. Like I'd have to run to the bathroom. And I'm like trying to see patients over here. So I was like, what a mess. And so was actually at like a symposium in Arizona, and the symposium was on infections. And so mold was a topic. And they're like, here are the signs and symptoms, here are all the things. And I was like, that looks very familiar. And so
Sounds like me.
sounds like somebody I know. And so another thing, when I first started in that office, is I started getting sick. Like this was on the back end of COVID. And, I never got sick through COVID. Like I think maybe I had a sore throat for like 12 hours, and that was it. I just loaded up on some vitamins, eat some good food, and I was good. But, I'm a strong advocate that if your immune system is strong, like you shouldn't get sick no matter what. And so, I'll have patients come in that are sick, and I'm not worried about it. My front desk, Rachel, she's not worried about it because our immune systems are strong. Going back to the mold piece, as soon as I started in that office, I got sick like twice. And, it was actually really interesting because In the muscle testing world, you're not really supposed to be able to muscle test yourself. And this is a really interesting topic.
Yeah.
And a lot of my colleagues who are, I would say, like the best doctors in the world, they just don't think that it can be like reliable and consistent.
Yeah.
And kind of an interesting topic, but I believe that like it was through those things, and then also through a lot of stuff that was happening in my personal life, like a lot of heartbreak and stuff, that I actually ended up developing like rheumatoid arthritis essentially. So like I would wake up in the morning and my toes literally hurt, like the joints, deep in the
Mhm.
joints, literally hurt while I was walking, and super bad fatigue, brain fog. I had zero motivation to spend time with the Lord in the morning. And so just all this stuff. And I'm trying to start this practice and trying to help people. And essentially, I didn't have anybody that could work on me. So I kind of had to learn how to muscle test myself. And the crazy thing about muscle testing yourself is if I kind of say like the proof is in the pudding. If you're accurate in what you're finding, then like your body will heal. If you're not, you'll end up on 5 to 10 supplements and things won't be getting better. And that's like most people, most cases in general, but especially when you're muscle testing yourself. And
Mhm.
so the Lord used all of that to help me, number one, learn how to test myself and be able to take care of my own health. And I do believe that's a gift. I think he could take away any minute, but I do think it's a gift. And then number two, he taught me all about mold. And so basically I went through my own healing journey with that. And now what's crazy is mold toxicity is something that's like considered to be like a 2 to 6 month, maybe a year whole healing plan. And what I found with patients is like 4 weeks is realistic, like to be
What? I
fully.
need to I need to talk to you because I'm going on year 4 and I'm still struggling.
We'll talk about it for sure. But like 4 weeks, and it has to do with a couple different things about mold. But I learned all about that, of course, eczema and things like that, and then of course the autoimmune piece, right? So many people have autoimmune conditions, and essentially, I think mine was triggered by viruses because my immune system was just in such poor health. And
Yeah.
so addressed all those things, and my body started healing itself. Since then, what have I had? Since then, I've had a number of different things just kind of pop up here and there health wise. But the Lord has shown me how amazing the body is, yet also how fragile the body is. The fact that if we go more than like, 1 or 2 or 3 days without water, like we'll start dying. Like we kind of live life like we feel invincible, yet we're so dependent. Like if we don't breathe for how many minutes that we need oxygen
3 minutes.
before we die. And so it's very humbling when you kind of realize and consider that, the scripture talks about, things being God breathed. He breathed air into Adam, and that every breath essentially comes from him. I had a patient, he flew down from Canada a few months ago. He had a chronic mold issue that was like triggering his autoimmune stuff.
Mhm.
And this guy, he walks in. I'd emailed him a few times. He called the office, but other than that, I hadn't really talked to him. And he comes in and he goes, so many years ago, this is like the first thing he tells me. He's like, so many years ago, I was really, really sick and I couldn't breathe. He's like, my lungs were just like really like suffering. He's like, I couldn't breathe. He said, all of a sudden, he hears from the Lord. He said, every breath you have, I give you. And then he takes a huge deep breath in his lungs, and then his lungs are fully restored. I'm like, I like this guy. And so he was really cool. We ended up like getting dinner and stuff before he flew out, but that was really, really cool scenario. So yeah, muscle testing, my own health journey there, eczema, mold, autoimmune stuff. I've had some different migraines and stuff throughout the last couple of years that would like come on randomly. And essentially I figured out like either I got parasites again or I was eating something that I thought was good, but it was actually kind of bad. Like I was eating some dried mangoes, organic mangoes from Costco. Okay, maybe.
Sorry, any dried fruit is the worst thing, and there's mold always typically
Okay.
with dried fruit. And I love dates, so I I understand.
Nice, nice, nice. So yeah, and all those things, and of course, I've gotten to learn a lot working with patients and things like that.
Yeah.
But I'm just super thankful for everything I've learned and where things are at now.
Yeah, there's a great book called spiritual root of like chronic disease. I think that's the whole title. But it's this pastor and he goes around and will figure out like what the root cause of these diseases are. And he talks a lot about SIRS in his book, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and how a lot of it is driven by fear. And so when you're exposed to mold, it messes up your limbic system and it causes you to literally be afraid of everything because you're living in an environment that's toxic. So your nervous system's always in the fight or flight, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're in that environment, it's really important to train your limbic system, but also get out of it. But I've seen a lot of healing happen just with some limbic system retraining and an understanding of fear and letting our body know that we're safe. Because when our body's constantly feeling like it's in danger, you're not going to heal. You can do all the diets, all the supplements, everything. And I mean, with muscle testing and stuff, we can address those things, which is awesome. Do you do any emotional code or anything like that, or no?
Yeah, so there's a lot of there's actually in the technique that I do, I would say I do the most. It's called systems healthcare technique.
Yeah.
There's an emotional component to that. That if there is a we were talking before the recording that there's usually a priority with each person's system, and if the emotional piece is a priority, like it'll come up. There are ways to kind of uncover those things somewhat sooner with muscle testing. But if anything, what I found too is that a lot of people have emotional issues because of these root causes that we'll talk about, because of these internal imbalances, infections, inflammation, all those things. But yeah, there's a little bit of emotional stuff that I'll do. And then, of course, with the Holy Spirit, like just trying to discern people,
Yeah.
like it's something that I always try to come back to.
Yeah, some people, they like, I can't believe you figured it out. It's like, the Lord really gave me the knowledge to understand the body and figure things out and put pieces together. And it's not that I know everything, but the Lord is just so gracious with like gifting us with these things. I really do think it's a gift because like, we were talking about earlier too. I speak to people about root cause and their brain just doesn't register because we're taught, in Western medicine that here's a symptom, here's a drug, that's it. Like there's no healing, you have this disease forever, all these things. So with the root cause, what I at least specialize in, I guess you could say, is Lyme, mold, heavy metals, and then like emotions. Are there any other root causes that you've seen? Kind of explain a little bit about root cause and how that's so important to address like overlying diseases, because I try to tell people, okay, you have lupus, right? That's like a banner like of all these collections of symptoms and what your body's doing, but we want to get down to the root of like, okay, why is your body expressing lupus? So yeah, just explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. There's different levels, I would say, to root causes, which is kind of an interesting conversation. But like the main root causes that we talk about are things like infections. So parasites, I think, are extremely common. I think probably 98% of people have parasites. I think bacterial issues and fungal or candida issues or candida issues are extremely common. Obviously, viruses, Epstein-Barr virus, long COVID, stuff like that. Mold is definitely important. Lyme, heavy metals. I would say chronic food sensitivities and allergies, which ultimately come from leaky gut type issues. I would say all of those things are root issues, along with other things that are kind of stem close to those things. So like something called ammonia toxicities. Ammonia usually comes from parasites and bacteria and fungus, stuff like that. And then also aldehydes. So aldehydes chemically are basically, molecules in the air. And so if you breathe in a bunch of dust, you could get this aldehyde toxicity. If you breathe in mold, you could get an aldehyde toxicity. You can also get an aldehyde toxicity from fungus and bacteria in your gut. They give off aldehydes, and aldehydes will contribute to a ton of brain fog and a ton of fatigue and gut issues and all that stuff. So I would say those are generally the main root issues. Of course, high cortisol and cortisol balance issues as well. But I would say even past that, when we talk about like, okay, well, how do you get parasite infections? Well, you get parasite infections because your immune system's not very good. We're exposed to parasites all the time through our food, through other people, through our pets, and all that stuff. And so it's not if you're exposed, you're going to be exposed, and we all are exposed at some point. It's about how your body does when you are exposed. Same thing with viruses, same thing with bacteria and stuff like that. There are things that are just neurotoxic, like mold. It's always going to be toxic to your nervous system. And then there are things like parasites and things like that that you only will get if your environment or overall just your health, your immune system is not very good. So when we talk about that, then what are the root causes that like weaken our system, that weaken our immune system? I would say poor food. I would say vaccines. I would say poor quality air. I would say poor quality water. And then I would say, ultimately the one that's probably most important is our spiritual health and where we stand with God. But then, of course, our mind and emotions and stuff like that. So those I kind of see all of those things as kind of underlying these root causes that we talk about, but it's all really important in regards to healing and staying healthy ultimately.
Yeah, so with just comparing it to Western medicine, if they like to section our bodies off and like, okay, you need
11
an eye
bodies,
doctor,
right?
right? Like the specialist.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, you have a gallbladder problem, we need to remove it or whatever, or you have a thyroid problem, let's obliterate your thyroid. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Wait, it's like we need to look at the body as a whole. And it's interesting that you mentioned, so I look at people like onions.
Hmm.
They have layers.
Hmm.
And so it might be mold. And so we address the mold. And it might be parasites. So then we have to address the parasites. And it might be emotions. And so we address it. It's not just one thing. And that's what I see a lot with people who come to me and they're like, Andrew, I think I have parasites. What do I do? And I'm like, wait, like you might, and it might be a problem. But that might not be what your body is actually trying to fix right now. So we need to figure out what the priority is for your body first and then go down there. And that's why I love muscle testing, because I feel like you're not wasting your time with different supplements. It's like, this is what your body wants right now, this is what your body's going to utilize right now, let's address this and then move on to whatever your body wants to next. We can talk later off air about some crazy patient stories that is just incredible. But I also with the gut and parasite thing, low stomach acid, I see that all the time. And if we're constantly eating processed foods and we're not chewing our food correctly and we're not producing enzymes, we'll start getting the high pH and have alkaline stomach, and we won't be able to kill these parasites or other pathogens that come into our gut, like H. pylori and E. coli and all these things, right? And it's just simple things that I tell people. I'm like, you just need to take betaine hydrochloride, right? And chew your food. Like, we're in America, we just go around not chewing our food. We eat in our cars. We're always hustling. And I mean, I'm the first to admit that I do that sometimes too. But it does cause an issue. We're not really meant to be go, go, go all the time. I think we've really lost our sacredcy and our honor system with our food because it's just so available and convenient. So we can just pop something in the microwave and eat it. And it's like, you might be even better not eating it and fasting for
Honestly.
a meal sometimes. So I just want to link root cause to like all diseases. So I want you to kind of explain this to our listeners, why root cause is important no matter what disease you have. Because I've seen patients, they have thyroid issues or they have infertility or whatever, but I still see the same root cause. It's just expressed differently. So I guess
Totally.
it's more of like the epigenetics realm.
Yeah, it's totally that's a whole interesting conversation because genetics are important, but how your body expresses those is even more important. I actually had a guy, was it this last week or the week before? He was testing as needing methylfolate 5-MTHF to help some different things with cellular health and bile flow and stuff like that. And what was really interesting is I said, hey, I want you. He was a Christian. I said, hey, I want you to pray. I said, I just want you to like thank God for the day and also bring your anxieties to Him. And so I just had him pray, and as he was praying, I was testing, and I wasn't testing any kind of methylation issue with needing methylfolate. And so the way that it was testing was actually like his methylation issue, which was, a lot of people point to genetics when they talk about methylation. You could argue his epigenetics were changed in the way that his cells were functioning better as he was praying. It was really, really cool. It was almost like
So
prayer
cool.
alters your genetics, or at least genetic expression. Like holistic doctors that know the Lord, I think most people would agree with that, which is a really cool thing. Yeah. So yeah, root causes. Why is that important? The biggest thing I tell people is like, you have to understand that, you know, just because you have no symptoms doesn't mean you're healthy, and just because the symptoms are gone doesn't mean that your disease and condition and root issue is gone. So it's like, if you want your body to fully heal itself, then you have to get to the bottom of things. And for some people that's a really hard concept to grasp. And so what I just continue to do is I ask the same questions that you ask. Is like, okay, you have high blood pressure. Okay, why? Like, what caused that? And that asking that question is key, because if people don't ask that question, which a lot of them don't, it's like, well, I guess the next step logically is to get on a blood pressure medication. And it's like, well, that's going to have side effects and cause detox issues and all these other things. Whereas if you ask the question, okay, well, what's causing this? Now you actually are in the ball game. now you actually have a chance at healing your body by actually getting to the bottom of things. So that kind of mindset is interesting. I come across that quite a bit with people. And you know what's interesting is like I don't know if people actually realize that they're thinking that way, or that they're not considering that there's something underneath it. And so sometimes in those conversations, I just encourage people like, well, what do you think is causing that? And most doctors will just throw out the genetic card. Oh, it's genetics. And it's like, no, it's not. It's just like that's just a cop out answer. So you can basically be lazy
And make money.
and make money. I think there's definitely some greedy doctors out there, but I think more often than not, I think doctors are their kind of predisposition is maybe bent more towards the laziness. I think that's just people in general.
Mm.
But when someone has a doctor beside their name, I think that what that looks like is not really putting in the time, not really putting in the effort to actually work for patients. And I think it's more of like, oh, it's genetics, or it's this, or it's that, and stuff like that. So I've heard some crazy stories. You actually had a really cool Instagram post the other day that was like, what's the craziest thing your doctor said? And I was like reading through those. I was like, that's wild. I've heard some similar things, but yeah, there's some crazy stuff there.
I remember vivid as day. I had lost 40 pounds in like 2 months, and I was having terrible tachycardia. Sitting down, my heart rate was like 170. I couldn't breathe, and I was eating fine, but I would get hives and stuff. And so I didn't have a primary care doctor at the time, so I just found one that my insurance covered. And this was like 3 or 4 years ago. And I remember sitting in his office, and I had a bunch of hives like all over my body, and I'm like, I'm losing weight. I don't know what's going on. And he looks at me and he's just like, you have anxiety. I'm like, yeah, I have anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah, now I have it even more now.
Yeah, he prescribed me a beta blocker, and I had to tell him no, cuz I'm like, I have low blood pressure and I'm already fatigued. Like, and I'm not even a doctor, but I knew that beta blockers are going to cause even more issues. I'm like, there's no way you're going to put me on a beta blocker. Like, I'm gonna be even more bedridden than I already am. And he goes, well, I don't know what to tell you. I was like, send me to do an ANA panel. There's something wrong. Give me an MRI. Like, I have MS. Like, just check. Like, just keep check. He was so lazy, like you said. And I hate to bash them, but I think it's just they see so many people, and it's like you only have 10 minutes with them, and it's just like, this is what I can offer you. And then if they don't have an answer, then they're just like, I can't offer you anything, I'm sorry. And I think that's just how they were taught. That's what they went to school for. And it's not that there's anything wrong, it's just that that they're wrong. It's like the whole system is kind of messed up. So I did go to my ANA came back positive. It was showing for lupus. And then I went to a rheumatologist, and they were like, well, you're young, and the positive isn't like crazy high, so we can put you on some steroids for a little bit, see if that helps. I did take the steroids. I got so sick.
The steroids.
Yeah, I lost my period. I lost even more weight. I started to get like a weird cough. Like, I don't know if I was like, I don't know what was happening, but I started like coughing up phlegm, and it was bad. My lymph nodes start to got all swollen. And then at that time, I had already been through muscle testing training, but I had like strayed away for quite a while, and I wasn't practicing. But I'm like, all right, I gotta call Dr. Shelley. I gotta get into the office because I don't know what else to do. And when they muscle tested me, the first thing that showed up was my adrenals, which made total sense. And so I just started there, and then went down the rabbit hole, found the mold, tested for Bartonella through resonance testing, like just everything. And I'm like, this all makes sense. All of it makes sense because throughout my whole life, joint pain, stomach issues, hormone issues, like everything. I always felt like there was something wrong with me, and nobody could tell me. They're like, oh, you're normal, you're hormonal, you're whatever, you're a woman. I'm like, I'm 17 years old, and my joints, I can barely open up if I'm sitting crisscross, I'm like, I have to pry my legs open. Like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
But, oh, your grandmother had arthritis.
It's like,
And
what? Yeah.
looking back, at my grandmother's health, I was like, I wish I knew what I knew now, because she got ripped apart by the medical system. I mean,
Yeah.
organs taken out, on tons of medication, diagnosed with endometriosis, lupus, fibromyalgia, like all these diagnoses. And she ended up, getting the big C and passing away. But she was only like in her 60s. And so I'm like, man, I do not want to do that. And I was going down that path already as a teenager. So yeah, I think root cause is just super important no matter what illness you're dealing with. Whether it's just simple like gut issues, well, gut issues are simple, but just dealing with something that you may think is normal. Advocate for yourself. Like if you have acid reflux, please go see somebody because it's gonna manifest into something even worse.
Hmm.
Because it's like a cascading effect of if you're not breaking down proteins, then you're going to be deficient, and then you're not going to methylate properly, and then it's just like this whole cascading effect of those one things. So you recover. I want to hear about this mold thing though. Can we actually talk about that?
We
This
can.
4 week approach. Okay,
Yeah.
go.
So mold. So you have mold spores that you breathe in. So you get
Yep.
mycotoxins in
Yep.
your body, and that's the main mold toxicity that people talk about. What I found is once those are in your body for like at least 4 weeks, then they start to sprout essentially to mold fungus infection, and usually that's in your gut. And
Mm.
so usually what happens with people that are in mold for a while is they start out with getting the mold toxicity, and that usually looks like fatigue, brain fog, stuff like that, sleep issues, anxiety. And then within usually about 4 to 8 weeks, they'll start developing a lot of gut issues, specifically gas and bloating, because that's the number one thing that like fungus will do in the gut. And so when you address those things, it's kind of tricky because, number one, how do you detox? And then number two, how do you kill the fungus or mold in your gut? And you really have to do them both at the same time or it's not going to work.
Mm.
So biochemically, I learned that mold spores, mycotoxins, are broken down via 4 nutrients in the liver. So your liver will actually break down mold with these nutrients. A lot of people talk about using binders and things like that for detoxing mold, and I just haven't really found that those work. And I think that's why people will say that mold requires 6 to 12 months and more to detox, is because ultimately I don't think the binders work that well. And so what I found is there's 4 nutrients that will detox it. Those nutrients are iron, B2, B3, and molybdenum. And Dr. Tim and I did a podcast on this, on mold toxicity and so forth, and talked through this. I think I have a few YouTube videos that are probably several years old, but they're up
I'll
there.
link them in the description for people to watch.
Cool. Yeah, that would be good. And so here's what's wild. B2 and iron are usually going to be deficient because of infections. So you get the mold toxicity. Your body is using all the B3 and molybdenum and iron and B2, all these things to try to detox the mold. And then the mold spores start sprouting in the gut. And now you have a fungus infection in your gut. And that fungus infection will feed on B2 and iron. So now even if you were to take B3 and molybdenum to detox the mold, it's not fully going to work because you still have an iron deficiency and a B2 deficiency because of the infection. And so you have to essentially take B3 niacinamide as well as molybdenum, fairly high doses, while also fixing and addressing whatever infections are feeding on B2 and iron. And so if you do those things perfectly, then you'll see that you can like fully detox mold and heal from that in like 4 weeks. So the way that I help people get to the bottom of those things is through the systems healthcare technique. So you asked what
Okay.
that was earlier.
Yeah.
The systems healthcare technique, I tell people, is the best technique that nobody's ever heard of. There are so many different approaches with muscle testing. And when I was going through school, I shouted about 10 different doctors that did muscle testing, and patients had different experiences at every place. And the results would always be, they would look very, very different, which, okay, when people are different, the results and the, what you find will look different, but just the methods and how they were going about things was very, very different and inconsistent. And so I came across the systems healthcare technique. And essentially what I found when I shadowed the founder, Dr. Ganjimi in North Carolina, he's in the Chapel Hill area. Essentially what I found was every patient that came in, they'd be different ages. Remember he saw a patient that was like maybe like 4 years old, and this kid had Arnold Chiari malformation, ton of brain inflammation, neurological development issues, all kinds of stuff. So he was helping this kid with that, brain inflammation, all those things. And the next guy would be like he's super overweight, terrible metabolism, gut issues, anxiety, all those things. So you'd see all kinds of different patients and cases. And with this technique and approach, of course, with the nutritional background and understanding of how the body works, he was able to get to the bottom of things. And so with patients with mold, most people are going to need B3 and molybdenum. That's a given. But the hard part is what's causing the iron and B2 deficiency. Like, what infections are there? And then when we talk about infections, what we found is that, let's say you have parasites. Well, there's probably 8 to 10 different herbs that can help with parasites. And what's crazy about this is your body will only need one, or your body will only want one or two of those 8 to 10 herbs, which means you could do a blend of herbs and it might not work. Even if you have those two herbs in that blend, you might also have 3 or 4 other herbs that don't really do anything, and then you might have 3 or 4 other herbs in that blend that are actually causing issues with your gut and issues with your immune system.
Yeah.
And so same thing with fungus and mold is when you have that infection, there's probably 25 to 30 different nutrients that can help kill fungus in your body. Well, you can't take all of them because there will be different interactions and it won't work well. And so usually I find with the systems healthcare technique that people need 1 or 2 of those 25 to 30 different herbs to fix their issue specifically. And the next person that has the same issue will need 2 totally different herbs.
Right.
And so that's where it gets kind of tricky and complicated with things. But if you get those things right at the right dosages, your body will heal itself. It's pretty cool.
And that's why muscle testing is awesome.
There's so many layers to things. And essentially what I found is when you have muscle testing, and especially the systems healthcare technique, which is so specific in how you test things, it takes a lot of the guesswork out. And I think that's one of the hardest things, especially for like holistic practitioners, is you can have a really great idea of what's going on, but even when you're trying to address that issue, there's still a lot of guesswork. And so I have patients that come in all the time that have these weird chronic issues, and I'll literally tell them, like, they'll be like, what do you think is causing this? And I'll tell them, I don't know. And
Let's
then I'll
figure it
say, let's
out.
find out, get
Yeah.
on the table. And so we'll muscle test through and figure it out. But there's so many things. I mean, I remember I had a patient yesterday. This girl's like 14, 15, and she has had a lot of issues with like chronic eczema. So one of the things that we found was that she needed glucuronic acid to help detox some estrogen stuff. And so that's found in artichoke. So I had her taking artichoke, and it was like flaring her eczema up. And so, mom was obviously not super excited about that. And so she was like, why is it flaring it up? And I was like, I don't know. And we had that relationship to where I didn't come across as an idiot, essentially, to them. Like, they knew that it's usually, I don't know, but let's figure it out. Like, we'll figure it out, so there's still a little bit of hope there. But essentially what we figured out was there's like actually a chronic immune system imbalance with a nut allergy she had from a long time ago that has never, her immune system's never fully healed from that. And that nut allergy, when you have the immune system imbalance that way, it'll actually suppress your ability to fight fungus. And so she had like this low underlying fungal issue, and artichoke is high in FODMAP, so it can feed fungus. So there's a few different things there, but essentially what she needed for the fungal issues was quercetin, which was actually what was going to help fix her immune system. So that and vitamin C. So are you familiar with Camu, by the way?
I take it every day.
Let's go. Sweet.
I haven't been in the muscle testing world for quite a while now, so this is definitely very encouraging to me because I want to get back into it, and it's just going to take some time and patience. But I tell people, I'm like, we're called practitioners for a reason. Not everybody's the same, but we can definitely use our clinical experience to help people. And it's interesting, every time I get muscle tested, I do show up for legumes, which is interesting because I used to eat chickpeas and hummus all the time, and I would always show up for legumes as being a food sensitivity. So I ended up kicking those to the curb. So I'm wondering if I have like a low allergy to legumes and peanuts too. I stay away from nuts in general just because there is high mold typically with peanuts. So I stay away from those regardless. But so we're going to wrap this up, but do you have anything else you want to share? If not, I just want to ask you one more question.
I don't think so. We'll probably have a part 2 down the road, but yeah, I think overall it's been good.
Yeah, great. So for people who are struggling with chronic issues, whether it's something like gut or hormonal, or maybe even something bigger like infertility, what would you recommend that they do first?
It's a good question. So I think in general, as like stewards, which is what we all are, we've been given things, and we should try to do our best to manage them and things like that. I think we should take time to learn about nutrition, and we should take time to learn about clean water. and we should take time to learn about clean air. And then we should also make sure that we're spending time growing with God and walking with God. And of course, spending time in community, having loved ones around us and serving other people, things like that are all super healthy for us. So that's kind of like your general, like, first line approach. There are some people that do all of those things great and their health doesn't improve at all. And that's where these root issues can be really, really, really tricky. In which case, I recommend you can work with like a functional medicine practitioner or a nutritionist, things like that. And that may be helpful. But what I have found is if you want to get to the bottom of things as quickly and efficiently as possible, I've fallen in love with the systems healthcare technique and all that it is. And so the crazy thing is there's only 18 people, I believe right now, 18 people in the States that are certified in this technique. But I would definitely try to find someone close to you, even if you have to drive 5 or 6 hours, even if you have to fly in and stay. It's gonna be well worth it. So, I guess one last thing I'll mention too is myself, Dr. Tim, the gentleman I do our podcast with, we both do like free consults for people. So free 15-minute consults, and we just talk about stuff with their health. A lot of times what that looks like is people come in or call in or I'll call them, but usually we'll get on the phone and talk about basically what they have going on. And a lot of the times it's me telling them, you can actually heal from this. And here's how you would figure out what's actually driving this. And then, they'll come in, we'll work through things. We'll address some things with nutrition and lifestyle, of course, but there's usually just some specific stuff we have to figure out with their body as far as toxicities and deficiencies. And once we figure those things out, usually things go really, really well. So, big story, I would say spend time learning about nutrition, spend time researching. Don't be afraid to work a little bit hard there. Reach out to people and ask for help. Set up consults if you need to and get differing thoughts and opinions from people. Trust God that he's going to lead you in the right direction, and just ask him for the next step. And he will lead you in those things. And then if you need to, definitely feel free to, seek out somebody that's certified in systems healthcare. And don't be afraid to travel a little bit to see them.
Yeah. So where can people find you on all the social media things and your podcast?
Yeah, so I'm not super, super active on things just because we're just usually slammed here in the office during the week. But
Yeah.
in general, my Instagram, Dr. Joel Miller, I post things there every once in a while. The website is drjoelmiller.com. You can read up more about kind of what we do there. And then I have a podcast with my colleague, Dr. Tim, who practices in Arkansas. And our podcast is called Freedom to Flourish. And I think we have about 70 episodes or so now. And we just talk about different health conditions, different health topics, all kinds of fun stuff. And we share like our experience, just like when we talked about, basically healing from mold in as little as 4 weeks. And we talk about a lot of stuff like that in our experience with other conditions. And so we've done a lot of different topics, and we try to come out with an episode every week. So I would say those are the main places. You can find me on YouTube as well, but I'm really not doing a whole lot there.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Joel. I'm pretty sure we'll have another podcast soon. And yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. Bye.